All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I'm back with another one like the other one. Not that one, but this one. So check it out, you guys. I got another banger for you guys. This one right here is titled The Southside Montebello Case Squad. This story right here is a long story. There's a lot of twists and turns to it. It's got a little bit of everything. So, I want to get this out to you guys as soon as possible. So without further ado, let me get straight into it. So like I said, this story is about the rise and fall of a gang in Southern California called Southside Montebello. It's a neighborhood that's been around since the 1960s, and like a lot of the other street gangs in Southern California that have withstood the test of time, like Florencia 13, Azusa 13, V&E, Harpies, Big Hazard, the San Fernando Valley, 18th Street, and the avenues, Southside Montebello is another street gang that has always been heavily entrenched with the Mexican Mafia. In fact, this is another topic that's come up in quite a few of my recent stories. The MS dominance and control over several street gangs in Southern California who have remained to be some of the Mexican Mafia's most steadfast believers. Most of the time, this is because members of some of these street gangs have been elevated and inducted into the Mexican Mafia. Then, after becoming carnales, they continue to maintain influence within their respective neighborhoods, while at the same time also applying the Mexican Mafia's concepts and belief system. Tablas, Topo, and Babo maintained a tight grip on Florencia and even implemented street policies that kept them in direct alignment with the Mexican Mafia. Chewy and Smokey had the same type of influence over V&E. Chewy and Smokey had the same type of influence within V&E. And in fact, their street crews were comprised of some of V&E's most loyal and staunchest members. Popeye from Harpies maintained tight control over his neighborhood. And it was the members from Harpies and Popeye's own immediate family that not only helped him protect his investments, but they also assisted him by continuing to help him push his whole operation forward. When it came to 18th Street and the Columbia Little Cycles, there's no question about the fact that Puppet, Night Owl, and Güero Caballo were the three forces behind this massive following. And it was Güero Caballo and Popeye who took their visions further by helping others establish the Mesa system. All these guys, they're not just leaders, but they were also some of the pioneers and architects that were instrumental in helping their organization implement some of the most fundamental, most important key policies. Joker, Danny Boy, and Cricket have been able to maintain a strong level of influence over Big Hazard, the same way Pee-wee and his younger brother, Little Pee-wee, have over the avenues. Then when you look at the San Fernando Valley and what Mosca was able to do out there, he managed to implement the Mexican Mafia's tax program out there on a scale that's never before been seen. But he also shared that blueprint with a lot of other members, and these concepts became invaluable. He had the whole valley on lock, and Mosca was instrumental in opening up a lot of doors. Sana was another Mexican Mafia pioneer who did the same thing in Orange County. Once referred to as the godfather of Orange County, he'll probably go down in the Mexican Mafia's history as one of their true legends. As I'm sure you guys all know, his influence went well beyond Orange County. He was also instrumental in stopping the inter-gang rivalries and implementing the no drive-by edicts. Here in this video, he's doing what he does best, controlling the streets, putting green lights on whole neighborhoods, and collecting taxes. Unfortunately for him, the contributions that he collected in this video was from an individual who was working as an undercover police informant. I've showed you guys this video before in a profile on Sana, but for the purpose of this story, I'm gonna show it to you again.
Yes. What's happening? Watch out. There's this wacko from Brownside and these vatos from Townsend, going over there to Merle, capping, shooting paisas, homie. Shooting the homies' uncles and shit like that. They're not even asking where you're from or not. I'm from Brownside. See, Brownside and Townsend. And, yo no quiero, like, I told the homies, what, kick back, because, I can't work it. They're doing something with you, ¿sí me entiendes? Los vatos de Townsend. So I don't want to step on your toes or nada, ¿sí me entiendes? Entonces, see if we can look into that. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Sí me entiendes? Yeah, Brownside. Took the light off of him. We'll put it right back on him again. Yeah, porque, they just shut the thing down. No están preguntando que se llama Wacko, el vato. Wacko, okay, Brownside. Watch out. This is for me, homie. Okay. With more respect, homie. Nosotros trabajando yo y, just tú sabes, homie, gracias por talking. You want me to get back on you on that? Because right now I told the homeless, palabras on the street right now, that's don't go downtown, so no hagas nada. Let me see what's up, you know what I mean? Because, get back to me tomorrow, homie. Get back to me mañana, tomorrow, around this time? Or in a couple of days. Hey, what's up with Chico, homie? I don't know where he's at. You got a number? ¿Qué pasó? Oh, you know what? You got a new number? I don't have his number. I've been waiting for him to call me. I haven't been able to reach him or nada, homie. I'm waiting for his call, man. I've been waiting for his suggestion. Yeah, was that right? Yeah. Oh, no. ¿Qué te iba a decir? You got a new number? I got the same number. Okay. I'm going to get a new another phone because the piece of the voice keeps dying out of me. It doesn't ring until I'm talking and it just cut off. Okay. And as far as in the neighborhood, ahorita nadie está haciendo nada, homie. The parts that we're doing something, they're on Mexico on vacations right now. Whatever. I'm just thinking, if I got your back on whatever I need to do, you know what I mean? As far as I clean up the fields and all that, man. You got that. All right, homie, and a ver si we can look into that. I'll do that. I'll be on it. Entonces, ¿qué he hecho mañana? Yeah. All right, homie.
And finally, I just told you guys about a story that involved Turi from Cucas. He not only had tight reins and asserted his influence over Cucas, but he also had a vast amount of territory that he had dialed in. And Turi was one of the Mexican Mafia's biggest breadwinners. I'm sure there's gonna be those that might disagree, but those are facts. Turi and Mosca were two of the biggest breadwinners. And then don't forget about the late Jocko from Azusa 13. He was another Mexican Mafia member that was able to establish unwavering loyalty over his neighborhood as well. Jocko, who was at one time a senior member, controlled the city of Azusa, authored an explicit business plan that the members of the gang were to follow that was consistent with the Mexican Mafia's directives regarding how all criminal street gangs in Southern California were to conduct business moving forward. I covered this in a profile that I did on Perico from Norwalk and Cisco from Puente. I got it right this time. This was something that I covered on a profile that I did on Perico from Norwalk and Cisco from Puente. I got it right this time. But in that profile, Jocko, he stated that per Mexican Mafia orders, the gang reserved the exclusive rights to control the underground clavo market in the city of Azusa. So this business plan was simple. It was a template that Jocko drafted to outline Azusa's business practices, instructed members of the gang to imagine the Barrio gang territory as a company, and to imagine the homeboys as employees of this company. This was an analogy that he gave. And exclusive sale rights for these suppliers within the Azusa city limits. Azusa 13 gang members were instructed to select a representative to speak to all the individuals selling D in the city of Azusa. And basically what Jocko was trying to do is he wanted these representatives selected so that they could explain to the distributors that Azusa 13 would not only act as enforcers but also as protectors over their business in exchange for a small profit of their sales on the streets. This was Jocko's version of the Mexican Mafia's taxation program, and this is how he established it on the streets. And according to the business plan, the gang would offer and guarantee full protection, and it would be the gang that would collect money from all those who didn't want to pay. And that furthermore, Azusa 13 gang members would deal with these individuals harshly for interfering with business. Members from Azusa 13 were also instructed to warn all the dealers that operated in their area that anybody who refused to comply with company policy would not be allowed to conduct business in the Azusa city limits and would also be subject to severe punishment. And pursuant to the business plan, the gang was supposed to send their wrecking crew to steal non-compliant individuals' D and money, or any valuables, or to kidnap a member of the dealer's family to display the unyielding authority of the gang. Finally, the business plan required the company to invest in supplies and to also maintain top-of-the-line artillery, AK-47s, SKSs, Tech 9s, Mini 14s, bulletproof vests, police scanners, walkie-talkies, and binoculars. And the senior leaders of the gang instructed the Azusa 13 gang members that the gang's main objective was to monopolize the entire D market in the city of Azusa, and reminded gang members to make contributions of extorted clavo proceeds to the Mexican Mafia. 20 years later, since they first began to issue their rules, Mexican Mafia-aligned gangs continue to operate under the same business plans as described in the Florencia 13 and the Azusa 13 prosecutions. When they conducted these two prosecutions, this is when the Mexican Mafia's taxation program was dissected and put on full display. Anyways, I don't want to get too far off track because that's what I'm doing. But let me get back to these individuals that I was mentioning. So anyways, all these Mexican Mafia members that I mentioned earlier helped the Mexican Mafia collectively establish the taxation program on the streets, as well as to exert influence over their neighborhoods. And I could continue to name these guys, as there's quite a few more. But this was just to give you guys an example of what happens when some of these guys go to prison, elevate their status, and then continue to maintain control over their neighborhoods on the streets. And keep in mind that all these guys that are Mexican Mafia heavyweights today, at one point in time, they were just regular gang members themselves. Then they went to prison, elevated their status, and successfully used that influence to continue building in their neighborhoods. So Southside Montebello was the same way. They were fiercely loyal to the Mexican Mafia, and they took their direction directly from the Mexican Mafia. However, the only difference with Southside Montebello is that they didn't have a member from that gang that went to prison and then later was inducted into the Mexican Mafia. And I'm sure every gang wants to see someone from their neighborhood make it so that they can be represented at the table, but it just doesn't always work like that. The Mexican Mafia doesn't strategically recruit so that it will have a member from every gang. Only those that fit the bill and those that prove worthy to fit the mold end up making it. The Southside Montebello gang was just one of many gangs in the Montebello area that just followed the traditional path and direction of the Mexican Mafia, based on the fact that they were loyal believers of the organization and that they believed in what they stood for. So this story starts out on November 10th, 2004, when a prosecutor for the city of Montebello filed a gang injunction against VSS MTB, or Southside Montebello. So the gang injunction was sought after the city attorney claimed that there was a major spike and an escalation in gang violence. To give credence to his claims, the city attorney brought in some of the city's highly coveted, highly decorated gang cops who were responsible for putting gang cases on this neighborhood and many others. The same gang cops that worked in this city took notice of the fact that this particular gang was becoming extremely active. And they gauged this by the amount of graffiti they were seeing, reported assaults, shootings, stabbings, confidential information that they were getting on the streets, and just through their own day-to-day observations of gang activity in that area. Keep in mind that while gang injunctions have commonly been used to combat gangs in both Northern and Southern California, the city of Montebello was one of the first cities outside of Los Angeles to obtain a gang injunction against a criminal street gang. Don't get me wrong, LAPD has specifically relied heavily on injunctions since the 1980s, ever since gangs began to flourish in Los Angeles. However, when they sought an injunction, city officials typically asked a judge to impose them on an entire gang or on a gang's faction. The ACLU took this up years later, citing constitutional challenges that included falsely identifying gang members who were targeted, but the city has been under fire for these same issues for years. Anyways, several law enforcement officers with the Montebello Police Department, who were all in support of the injunction, submitted declarations to curb gang activity and to take steps to stop the violence. They basically came in and acted as rubber stamps for the city attorney. And when these officers came in and submitted their declarations, they basically indicated that the Southside Montebello gang had demonstrated a pattern of committing their crimes and gang activity in designated areas of the city that were referred to as hot zones. Specifically, officers from the Montebello Police Department noticed that members from this gang committed the majority of their crimes, including robberies, shootings, and carjackings, in an area of Montebello that would later be designated as the city's safety zone under the terms of the injunction. The injunction basically prohibited Southside Montebello gang members from associating with each other, carrying guns or weapons, dealing or using clavo, recruiting youngsters, and tagging or carrying spray cans or tools to create graffiti. Southside Montebello gang members were also prohibited from showing gang signs or harassing people in the area that was considered to be the safety zone. Additionally, the gang members were prohibited from being in the safety zone from 10 p.m. until sunrise. They hit these guys with the curfew, and they were enforcing these policies tough. So basically, after the injunction was in effect, officers from the Montebello Police Department could serve any Southside Montebello gang member who were engaging in conduct prohibited by the terms of the injunction. This of course gave these cops broad discretion that was open to their own interpretation of the law. Imagine how that worked out. You could call it broad discretion, or you could call it an open hall pass to do whatever they wanted, because that's basically what happened. Per the guidelines that were set forth in the injunction, these officers were required to document the fact that they had served Southside Montebello gang members with the injunction, as well as any statements that were made by Southside Montebello gang members when they were served. These documented admissions normally included either explicit or tacit admissions of these gang members. And I'm not being impartial, I'm just giving you guys the facts, that the admissions were grossly exaggerated in an effort to slander their character and to justify any ensuing arrest. And then of course, later on, they doubled back and used these admissions as useful evidence against these guys when they hit them with Operation Sudden Impact. Once served, if that Southside Montebello gang member then again violated the terms of that injunction, law enforcement had the authority to arrest that individual for a misdemeanor charge. But unfortunately, while the injunction did bring the crime rate down, it did not stop all gang activity in the city of Montebello. Soon after the injunction was in place, Southside Montebello gang members created an even more violent subgroup of the gang called the K Squad, or the Killer Clique. So members of the Southside Montebello gang who committed several shootings or at least one murder were elevated to this elite level of the gang. So they also allegedly created a category system that gave them the ability to elevate within their own rank and file. And within the realm of that lifestyle, this is analogous to the status mobility system, or the blood in, blood out concept, meaning the more blood you spill, the more messier or more sinister your acts of violence are, the faster you elevate and climb that ladder. So not to get off track, but after the injunction was in place, the Southside Montebello gang committed several murders. For example, Jimmy Valenzuela, also known as Shy Boy, one of the founding members of the K Squad or the Kill Clique, allegedly committed the execution-style murkings of two rival gang members in 2007 and 2010 in an effort to elevate his status within the gang. First, in 2007, Joe Alvarado was shot and killed in what was considered to be a gang rivalry-inspired shooting. So Alvarado was sitting in the front passenger seat of a sports utility vehicle somewhere in the 800 block of West Mines Avenue when someone walked up, believed to be Shy Boy, and shot him several times before fleeing the area. The next incident happened on July 4th, 2008, when Southside Montebello gang member Edward Evil Dewey allegedly murdered Jose Casillas, who was shot attending an Independence Day celebration party with his family. This was the perfect opportunity for Evil to get the drop on Casillas, and nobody would even know what was happening until it was too late. Because while they were at this fireworks display watching the fireworks, Evil knew that the gunshots would be drowned out by the other fireworks that were being set off that night. Anyways, according to my source, Evil wasn't specifically targeting Casillas that night. This was a chance encounter, because at the time, V&E and Southside Montebello were feuding. So Evil went there that night with intention on catching anybody from V&E who was there. Unfortunately for Casillas, he just so happened to be there that night with his family. So as Casillas was out there with his family enjoying the fireworks display, completely oblivious to the impending danger that he was in, Evil casually walked up and shot him several times before turning and running off into the night. Nobody except for those that were close to Casillas even knew that anybody got shot that night because the fireworks were so loud. So Casillas' family, they call 911, an ambulance shows up within 10 minutes, and despite efforts to save his life, he ends up dying right there on the spot. Because this was a shooting that happened at a public event, Montebello PD showed up within minutes and flooded the area with law enforcement. Meanwhile, Evil was trying to get away, but he was still held up somewhere, probably because of the heavy presence of police, but he was stranded nonetheless. So at that point, he figured the best thing that he could do is hunker down somewhere, call somebody, and hope that somebody could come pick him up. And that's what he did. Rather than to try to take a chance of walking out of there himself and being identified, he waited until someone came and picked him up. Apparently, he called other members of Southside Montebello who showed up, helped him get away, and they also helped him dispose of the murder weapon. Later in court, all the details will come out about how these guys helped Evil flee the scene and how they helped him get rid of the murder weapon. But this was just the beginning of the conflict between Southside Montebello and VNE. So a little over a month later, on June 21st, 2008, Juan Garcia and his 12-year-old son, who were attending a graduation party, were both shot to death on the 100 block of East Madison Avenue in Montebello. So while they were there at this party, a fight broke out between some Southside Montebello gang members and their rivals. This ended up being another chance encounter, and the conflict escalated. Apparently, this graduation party was being attended by some Southside Montebello gang members who had previously been affiliated with the tagging crew called CSC, Can't Stop Crime. The party was also being attended by several other individuals who were affiliated with another tagging crew. The party was also being attended by several other individuals who were also affiliated with another tagging crew that were called FUC. Can you imagine being from a hood that's called Fucking Up Cities? Hey, where you from, homie? Fucking Up Cities, Holmes. Where you from? So apparently all these guys were there at this party in support of either family or friends that were graduating that day. However, these were known rivals that had had several altercations before in the past. So eventually a fight breaks out, bottles start flying, and threats were made. The Southside Montebello gang members, they leave briefly, and about 20 minutes later, they come back. So when they came back, one of their boys named Joe Durantes came back with them. So Joe, he's walking around in the party and he's scanning faces, trying to identify his enemies. And when he spots them, he pulls his gun out and he starts busting. According to everything that's been said, Juan and his 12-year-old son, Albert, weren't affiliated with either gang. However, they were at the wrong place at the wrong time, and both of them ended up catching stray bullets. When the confrontation erupted, they got caught in the crossfire, and both of them ended up getting shot and killed on the scene. So in 2010, Jimmy Jimenez was shot and murdered in what was considered to also be a gang rivalry-inspired shooting. Jimenez was shot several times in the 300 block of Lohart Avenue in the city of Montebello. Apparently, Jimenez was walking northbound on Lohart Avenue when someone pulled up in a black compact car, jumped out, and shot him several times. He probably didn't even know it hit him because he was basically ambushed. So the Jimenez and the Casillas homicides initially were both considered to be cold case homicides. However, later on, Shy Boy would end up implicating himself in both of these homicides to an undercover confidential informant who persuaded him to confess. This guy was wired up, and apparently he persuaded Shy Boy into divulging the details of these two murders. So this ended up setting off a small war with VNE, as VNE is another dominant gang that is also closely controlled by the Mexican Mafia. In the beginning, there was speculation about what gang was responsible for committing these two homicides. But by the time the MA had conducted their investigation and put these issues to rest, the murders had already been committed. Not only that, but a lot of these inter-gang rivalries are committed by the younger gang members, who are a lot more reckless and who tend to be a lot more harder to control. And by the time the Mexican Mafia were able to get word out on the streets and got a handle on things, a lot of these rivalries had already escalated beyond the point of bloodshed. So the process was slow moving and in some cases redundant. All right, you guys, this concludes part 1 of Southside Montebello Case Squad. Stay tapped in for part 2 with more exclusive video. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Paradigm Profiles. If you guys liked this episode, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this episode, give it a thumbs down. But either way, drop a comment and let me know what you think. As always, I want to extend my appreciation to you guys for continuing to support the channel and for also just helping it grow to where it is today. On that note there, you guys be safe and enjoy the rest of your night. Until the next one, you guys stay positive and let's continue to push those resolutions that we made for ourselves in 2025. With that said, this is your boy B and I'm gone.